looks like we were able to win the die roll here. And yeah, sure. Definitely down with this hand. Couple cyclers, a way to play Living End. We could actually Demonic Dread into Living End next turn if we want to do that. So we'll see what our opponent's up to here. All right, it looks like we're up against Tron. There's a star. So I'm going to start by cycling the Wraith. And since we drew the Monstrous Carabid, I'd actually rather have that one in the graveyard. So I'm going to go ahead and cycle that one here. So now we actually have Violent Outburst, so we have the option to go for Living End at instant speed here with Violent Outburst. We could also simply Demonic Dread right now. I think we want to just hold up the Violent Outburst. And cycling the Deadshot Minotaur would give us another creature in the graveyard, so there's definitely a reasonable argument to making that play as well. I think I actually like cycling the Deadshot Minotaur. And the reason being is that we have 10 damage, and if our opponent plays something like, say, Karn next turn, then we don't want our opponent to be able to immediately get rid of one of our 2 creatures. So I like having more creatures in play. So I'm going to go ahead and cycle the Deadshot Minotaur and opt not to go for Living End. Well, that's a little bit unlucky. We drew an additional Living End. And now I think we're pretty locked in to going for Living End next turn. We'll see what our opponent plays. So it is Karn. All right. So we'll see what our opponent wants to do. It looks like exiling a card from our hand. We don't really mind that. But I am going to go for the Living End. And we're pretty much all in at this point because we're not going to be able to... We've drawn all of our Living Ends, so we're not going to be able to Living End anymore, most likely. So we have the option now of going after Karn. I'm going to cycle a Jungle Weaver here. Would have been nice to have drawn something like a Fulminator Mage or Beast Within to disrupt this Tron that our opponent set up. So I think we want to go ahead and just take Karn out right now. We have exactly 10, so that works. So we may actually end up using these Demonic Dreads if our opponent plays a creature to prevent our opponent from blocking. It's pretty unlikely that that happens. Well, unfortunately, our opponent has Ugin here, and this is pretty much game. Our opponent can just minus Ugin and get rid of our board, so having the turn 3 Karn into Ugin is pretty much the best draw Tron can have. And I don't really see a way out of this, so I'm just going to go to the next game. So, alright. So, in this matchup, there's actually not a ton that we really want to be doing as far as sideboarding goes. Shriekmaw is a card we don't really want. So I like boarding an Ingot Chewer as a way to just get rid of our opponent's Chromatic Stars, a random Oblivion Stone, that sort of thing. So yeah, I like a couple of Ingot Chewers, but I don't think we need to do too much for this matchup. So I'm just going to board in a couple Ingot Chewers, and this is going to be the configuration. So hopefully this time we can maybe disrupt our opponent's Tron a bit more. I am going to keep this one. It's pretty similar to the last hand we had. A few more lands. So let's start off. Well, our opponent could have Relica Progenitus, which is something we do have to be a little bit wary of, but that's going to be a card that's going to be tough for us to beat. So I'm just going to play Blooming Marsh and pass the turn here. Alright, so it looks like no 1-mana play. Interesting. So once again, I'm going to cycle the Street Wraith first, and then cycle the Deadshot. And there's a Fulminator. Okay. So we have 2 Fulminators. Interesting. Alright, we'll see what our opponent can do here. We can't actually do anything this turn. So we're hoping that our opponent doesn't have much here. Except, alright, that's essentially exactly what our opponent needed. The Relic of Progenitus. So we are definitely sad about that. And so now we definitely want to sacrifice this Verdant Catacombs. And this puts another card in our graveyard, which is kind of nice. So I think we want to just go for blowing up the tower. And we'll see if our opponent actually cracks this relic or not. It looks like no. So our opponent's playing this pretty well, actually. So the question is, now there's another Urza's Tower that our opponent has. We could play the Violent Outburst and force our opponent to sacrifice the relic. But that play doesn't seem great for us. I mean, I think we do want to still go after our opponent's lands just to stop our opponent from getting Tron. And it does look like our opponent's playing green-white Tron. Here's a Rest in Peace, okay. So it looks like our living end plan is just completely off the table. So we're going to have to try to find a way to just beat down. So we actually drew a Monstrous Carabid, which we can use as an attacker. So I'm going to cycle this Aquatex of Will. Alright, interesting. There's a Kessig Wolfrun. So just going to pass, and we're on the beatdown plan, but it looks like our opponent has just naturally drawn 3 copies of Urza's Tower, which is really pretty unfortunate for us. This Ingot Chewer is a little bit late. So I'm just going to play out the Monstrous Carabid. But our opponent is going to have Tron, so our opponent's draw has lined up really well against ours this game. Yeah, there's Karn. Alright, looks like our opponent's going after our hand. Interesting. So we want to go and try to get this Karn off the table. It's not going to be easy. Possibly, it might just be impossible at this point. So Karn's on 6. If we played Fulminator, we just couldn't get rid of the Karn. So I think I like... I think I still like the Fulminator, but we don't have to sacrifice it this turn. And we do have this Kessig Wolf Run, which we could use to pump up a creature if we want to. Alright, here's Ulamog, and that's going to just do it.